Hello, I'm Michael Bennett. I'm CEO of Altamira Gold, a TSX listed junior mining company with three major projects in the north of the state of Mato Grosso in Brazil, with a land position of 150,000 hectares, and where we are actively exploring for both gold and copper, and where we have a 43-101 resource on our Cajueiro project with 700,000 ounces of gold already approved.
Brilliant. Good to see you again. We haven't spoken since, I'm going to say, March 2020. Feels like an eternity.
Absolutely, Matt. We spoke last at the beginning of this new world we live in, at the beginning of COVID.
So long ago, different lifetime. But a few things have changed, which is, why I'm quite keen to talk to you. Some nice things happening now. Back then, not so much. Where FMS didn't kind of work out the way things were planned. What went wrong? I think I know the answer.
Well, so we last spoke in March. FMS was due to come in and build the plant in Cajueiro. They wanted some things we didn't want them to have in the company, and so that didn't quite work out. Then we got into bed with Metal Stream, this group out of Malaysia, and I spent from April to September working actively with them to raise $6 million on a forward gold sale. That didn't work either. Unfortunately, Metal Stream fell over on us. And so in October, I looked for alternative financing sources. I found them, Matt, but they weren't good either for the company or for the shareholders. And we were going to give away the baby and the bathwater if we'd taken on that route. And so in November, the board and the management got together. We looked at the market. We saw that there was a new window of opportunity, that exploration was being given more of a bang for the buck. And so we actively went out looking for financing for our exploration story for the three projects. And that's where Quinten Hennig came into it. We presented the case to him. He introduced it to Crescat. And on February the 5th, we closed a financing with Crescat as our lead order in that financing for $4 million. With them for 1.5. And that was important. It was very important to us. They're active shareholders. They're very, very proactive in the way we are pushing our projects forward. And not least of importance, that they're one of the 5 top performing groups in the US, financing groups in the US right now. So we're very, very happy to have them on board. And that has led us to 2021, with a much, much bigger exploration push than we've ever had before, Mark.
Beautiful. Crescat, Quinten, very, very busy across the board. And I do want to hear about it. But help educate me, and maybe some of the listeners here, because, a lot of juniors get a lot of criticism when things go wrong. But the reality is people are investing at these, high leverage, high return opportunities, but there's a high chance that things go wrong or don't go quite according to plan, market conditions or otherwise. So this time last year, the financing options were limited, and not without giving away the baby with the bathwater there. So what do you do in those circumstances? So, you were exploring lots of different routes, like Metal Stream example was one. What was your expectation of them? What were they going to try and do for you, which would have solved the cash flow problems?
Well, what we were trying to do back then in mid 2020 was we were trying to raise $6 million US. To put a small production plant install a small production plant in Cajueiro to produce between 12 and 15,000 ounces of gold a year. Now that would have given us a nice cash flow. Would have given us a cash flow of $4 or $5 million, and that was the intent at the time, was to use that money for exploration. Now what's gone wrong in the meantime? One, obviously, Metal Stream. They just fell over backwards on us. But also COVID got in the way last year. So, since we last talked, we've lost 6 months in the field with COVID. we couldn't get our sample out to Australia until December, our MET sample. And so we got hugely delayed in terms of what we really want to know is exactly how we build the plant. So, we eventually got the sample off in December. The tests are ongoing and they're looking very good. And we should know within the next month or so whether we can use this new leaching technique in lieu of cyanide leach. And if we can, then, that's a real big step forward for Altamira. In the meantime, we were kind of left flapping around there, and we looked at the market. We saw that exploration was really firing people's imagination. And we've got 3 exploration stories. Now, we're not a company with a lack of exploration stories. We're a company with 3 big projects. And it's serendipity that's put those 3 projects into Altamira. But it's great for the shareholders because we now have different areas that we can go into and look for not just gold. Gold was the thing we went in there looking for in 2014 when we set the company up. But we also have copper. We have the porphyry copper story. Anglo-American discovered a porphyry copper in the belt in 2017. And also Meteoric Resources have now announced that they've found another porphyry in the belt. So we got 2 projects where I firmly believe that we have a lion's chance of finding a porphyry underneath our surface mineralization. One of them is Santa Helena, and the other one is Apiacas.
Brilliant, and we're going to talk about them in a second. And I just want to work out if there's any lessons learned from what went on in the past. So, the market was the market, okay? And it affected a lot of people. But do you think that you were right to be talking about a production story then? Should you have been talking exploration then? When you look back with the benefit of hindsight?
Well, I think if I remember the last interview, I talked about both. I think I talked about production and exploration. And I'm still talking about both. I haven't changed my story. It's just that we were forced, if you like, to rethink about the way we do things. So we brought, rather than having the horse and cart, we've now brought the thing vice versa.
Okay, fine. So I guess changing conditions, you got to change. You got to adapt your strategy, be flexible. Certainly down at these levels in terms of junior exploration. I get it, it's tough. Like I always say to people, mining is tough, and if you want big returns, you got to be prepared for big losses too. Pick your horse. Well, let's talk about the project. So Apiacas, I guess, is the flagship, and then Cajueiro, behind that. So what can you tell us about Apiacas and how you're going to approach it? And with regards to the money that you've raised, how much are you allocating to this? So
let's just step back and think about Apiacas. We were awarded after 5 years wait at Apiacas in 2019. And to be quite honest with you, we didn't really imagine that we would get such a large land package. So historically, why is it important? It's really important because it was the largest gold producer, historic gold producer in the Alta Floresta belt. In the whole of the 80,000 hectares, 1.5 million ounces of gold was produced. And that was produced how? It was produced by one man and his dog with a sluice mining technique, recovering 50% of the gold. So that's 3 million ounces of contained gold in the 80,000 hectare package. But more importantly still, is a central area called Mutung. Now, Mutung, I have to admit that up until a few days ago, I would have told you that Mutung started production in 1979 with the local garimpeiros, the local miners working there. It actually started in 1969. We've got hold of some old satellite images. And you can see the alluvial workings from 1969 in that area. The heart of the jungle, these guys went in there. So it was obviously a very rich area. They took out in Mutung, in the central area, in a very, very limited area, an area of about 4 kilometers east-west strike length and 1 kilometer northwest strike length. They took out 1 million ounces of gold. And, where did they take it from? They took it out of the soft surface material, the weathered material. So you imagine the Amazon rainforest with all this material which has been heavily eroded and altered. And they washed that out with high-power hoses. And there were thousands of these guys in there from 69 onwards. And not just them. There was also a company called Paripanema from 1979 until for 9 years they were in there, and these guys basically sluice mined as well with bigger equipment, and 1 million ounces was taken out of this area. So in an area of 4 kilometers by 1, and I am saying 20 meters a maximum vertical depth, they took out 1 million ounces of gold. So it was 2 million ounces of contained gold in the top 20 meters of this area. That's what's the first thing that turns me on completely. It makes me think, wow, if we've got the same rock type going down to depth, we've got something pretty big on our hands here. So what have we done there? So first of all, we got in there in 2019, we sampled it. We've continued to do that over the last 12 months as well on new areas within that block. We consistently see a rock, which is a leopard-spotted intrusive rock, which is green in color. It's got hydrothermal alteration, and that's what the boys took the gold out of. So where it was soft, they washed it. Where it was hard, they didn't. Now, why not? Why didn't they take out the harder rock? For 2 very simple reasons. 1, they didn't have a crushing capability, and 2, the grades were too low for these local guys. So that they needed to recover 4 or 5 grams a ton, and our rock runs over a gram a ton. So of the 250 rock samples, chip, channel, et cetera, that we've taken in the area, we get an average grade of plus 1 gram per ton gold, which is too low grade for these guys. So what have we done? We've got a 2D model now, 4 kilometers by 1. The rocks, leopard-spotted rocks sitting there all over the place on surface there, where these guys have washed away the soft material. And we don't know how deep it is. So, there's 2 ways of looking at this. You can either go in there with a rig and you can drill and drill and drill and drill, but 4 kilometers is a big area, and you can probably guarantee that you will put it in the wrong place in the first instance. So we decided to contract a Brazilian geophysical company, and we put them in there about a month ago. They're doing a survey called induced polarization, where you pump a current through the rock, and that current comes back faster where you've got sulfides. So where this leopard-spotted intrusive rock has pyrite in it, guess what? You get what's called a chargeability high. And we showed in our last press release, Matt, that we're getting some very, very interesting readings. And coincidentally, in the same vertical section below the area where we're getting auriferous samples in this intrusive on surface. So 60, 70 meters below surface, which is where you would expect the oxides to peter out and the sulfides to come in, the fresh bedrock to come in, is exactly where we're seeing these chargeability anomalies. And we're working out both east and west from that right now on the central part of this 4 kilometer stretch. And we are putting this 3D map together. And that is what we will use to site our first drill holes in July.
Right. And how are you breaking up because you raised, what did you raise? You raised about just over 6 million, plus you got some warrants through, which raised about 1.4. So
we raised 4 million. Yeah, we raised 4 million in the private placement, and then just over 2 million came in warrants.
Got it.
So we got just over 6 million in the kitty right now. And what we intend to do with that is, as I say, starting in July, unless there's some civil war in the world or COVID comes back on us, we will be drilling in July, and we will earmark 5,000 meters of drilling initially for the central part of our Mutung area. So the idea is to go down to drill into these anomalies, so drill down to between 100 and 150 meters vertical depth, to look at the source of these anomalies and how far this leopard-spotted material goes down. And then as we get that information back, we will step out both east and west. We'll obviously have to continue our permitting process there because there are a lot of small properties in the area, small land properties, and we need to get each one of those permitted separately. But we will step out gradually both east and west and understand the size, the depth, and the strike length east-west of this body.
So just in dollar terms, I'm trying to understand how much you're allocating.
In dollar terms, we're going to spend about $1 million on drilling in Apiacas.
Okay. And then should we just talk about Cajueiro now, just so I understand how they kind of fit together and where your head's at with regards to how you take the company forward as well as these projects forward?
Cajueiro, let's go back to the mining. Let's go back to what we were talking about in 2020. We did a pretty detailed met test here in Brazil on the oxide ores that we have in Cajueiro. But we decided that we'd also like to do a test on using a different type of reagent instead of cyanide for leaching. And so we sent it to a laboratory called Clean Mining in Australia, where we've been doing for the last 3 months some tests on thiosulfate leaching. Now, we're at the stage now of looking at the economics of that. So we know more or less how it works. We're looking at the economics now of this thiosulfate. And if it works, then we are probably going to be able to rehash our plant and take away the gravity portion of the recovery in the plant. So we would go just from crushing to straight leaching. That would be the advantage of that to us. And we've also looked at the area we plan to put the plant. Just after we had that last interview, we actually got permission to put the plant in Mato Grosso. But our preference is to put it in the state of Pará, a few 100 meters north. And we are still waiting for that environmental permit to be approved.
Why that? Is it a better state to do mining in? I mean, why that?
No, it's better for us in terms of topography. So tailing have been the big problems in Brazil over the last 12 months or so. And we have an area which is topographic low surrounded by hills there. And it was a perfect area for the tailings dam, a natural area. And so we prefer to actually have the plant there. So, the whole fact that the financing was delayed and the metallurgical testing hasn't yet been finished has actually fallen into a better position for us in that respect.
Right, just remind everyone with regards to the scale of the plant. We're talking about 1,000 tonnes a day.
So the plant is 700 tonnes a day.
700, got it.
We're going to scale it to up to 1,000 tonnes a day, but we're limited because of the permits to 700 tonnes a day. And, the oxides are slightly sweeter than the overall resource. So the overall resource has a grade of about 1.2 grams per tonne. And the oxide grade should be plus 2 grams per tonne.
Right, so it gives us an idea of what you can produce.
We're talking about a production, of about between 12 and 15,000 ounces a year. At a very, very reasonable cost as well, Matt. So we were talking about our production cost of about $550 an ounce.
Right. And so what's this sort of arbitrage here between spending any money on that and doing something which you said earlier is a bit hotter, which is exploration? So
exploration we need to do anyway. So if you think about where we want to take Cajueiro has to grow, right? So in my mind, 700,000 ounces in an area which is 1.5 hours drive from this major airport of Alta Floresta is a great little project. But I want it to be millions of ounces. And so how are we going to do that? So we've got 3 new areas called Maria Bonita, Novo Sonhos, and Sossego, which in total, if I add them up, are 5 kilometers of strike length of gold in soil anomalies. And those have never been trenched, never been drilled. So we're in the process right now permitting one of those areas, that's Maria Bonita, for exactly that, to open up trenches and to design a drill program for the second half of this year to be able to add that to our resource. Now, adding that to our resource, let's say we double the resource. That makes the project much more attractive. It enables us to go then into the second phase of the environmental project, which is a full environmental license. And it will enable us to do the full economics on it to put into production a much, much larger plant by 2026.
Okay, so how do you move the company through to a stage where it's more interesting? It removes itself from the crowd. You're in a very sort of crowded space in terms of size, in terms of grade, in terms of market cap, in terms of available cash. There's a lot of people, beating the same drum. So what do you think it's got to take for you guys to kind of move away from the pack?
I think we're getting close to that now. We haven't obviously released all our results of the geophysics, but we will do shortly. And drilling will be the next stage in Apiacas. So, if you really want to ask where my heart is pounding right now, it's pounding for the drills to come into Apiacas, and for me to be able to say that this intrusive rock, this leopard-spotted rock, goes down to depth. If that happens, we are sitting on a very large gold deposit. And that will take us away from the pack.
Okay. So we'll see that come out over the next. So when do the drills actually hit the ground?
They should be there by mid-July.
Right. Okay. So we'll start seeing some numbers coming out after that. Just on Santa Helena, which is a kind of copper gold project. You talked about copper earlier, and I think people are keen to see a few more copper discoveries out there. What do you know about that today, and are you going to spend any dollars on it?
Okay, so Santa Helena, if you'd asked me, so we got 3 projects, and you're always a little bit tied. I think I told you in the last interview that Brazil had hugely improved in terms of timing on permits. Well, it has. The system's a lot more transparent, but COVID hasn't helped. And also Brazil's having a bit of a clampdown now on, illegal mining activity of garimpeiros, et cetera. So environmental permits take time to get approved. So what are we doing in terms of Santa Helena? We've got a project there which is 60 kilometers away from Anglo-American's Jaca discovery, first porphyry copper discovery in the belt, where we have copper in soils, where we have copper in rocks, where we have stockwork on surface, which looks like it's part of a porphyry system. We have some very, very interesting other mineral assemblages along with the copper, such as molybdenum. And we believe that sitting underneath Santa Helena, we've got a porphyry source. So we're a small company with a limited resource base, human resource base. And so what we've done there for Santa Helena is we've contracted a very, very senior porphyry expert, a guy who has been working for 30 years for a major copper company, who retired in January, and is now actually doing the consultancy work for Altamira to put together the exploration program on Santa Helena for the second half of this year. And what will we be targeting on Santa Helena? We'll be targeting 2 things. One, the really, really high-grade gold veins, which have been worked on surface by the landowners and the local miners. And 2, which is really, something which we need to target better before we drill there, is the porphyry source. So we want to see copper. We want to see that copper source. We want to see the high-grade gold. And that's what we want our shareholders to share with us. And it's not just Santa Helena, Matt. It's also Apiacas. So, while we've been looking around Apiacas, we talk about Mutung, we talk about the gold there, but we haven't really talked too much about the copper story there. But if you imagine what we've got 50 kilometers of east-west extent of surface mineralization in this district called Apiacas. Now, something has to be plumbing that. Now, is it an intrusive related source? Is it a porphyry source? Is it a gold porphyry, a copper porphyry, or a moly porphyry? That I can't tell you, but something has to be plumbing our mineralization in Apiacas. And so with the extra people that we've taken on right now, we have a group who is actually soil sampling areas that we have identified by interpretation of the Brazilian government's airborne geophysics. And we are doing that within our 80,000 hectare property package.
Do you feel sort of a little bit comfortable now? You've got Crascat, you've had the Crascat bump, you've got cash. do you feel that you maybe need to look at some of the other projects that you've got in the portfolio and maybe think about doing something with those, whether it be farm outs or JVs or other?
Yeah, I worked for 2.5 years talking to majors. Right? And why didn't we do JVs? It wasn't because we didn't want to or because we were too slow with the deals. The whole problem with JVs was, and if you think about, how a major looks at life, a major can look at 50 years of life. He can sit there with, the top 30 projects and the top 5 go ahead and the other 25 sit on the library shelf. And we were worried that would happen in the second phase of the JVs we were offered. And so we didn't do those JVs. And so what we're doing now with this financing we've achieved the first half of this year is we're moving those ahead ourselves. And I'm not going to tell you we're not going to do a JV in the future. We may spin properties out. We may spin Apiacas out into a different vehicle. We may spin Cajueiro as a mining venture out into a different vehicle. But we'll look for ways of giving our shareholders value for their dollars.
I was thinking mostly about the other projects that you've got, not your 3 core projects here, but some of the others, because it seems quite easy to raise money these days for projects. There will be teams looking for projects. Can you monetize some of the spare projects that you have?
We could do that, yeah. We have had a few come and knock on our door and ask us what we're doing with, for example, Colida, Nova Cana. My gut feeling is that we don't want to give Colida away just yet, and for a simple reason, not because of the gold, because of the copper. So I think we're looking at, on the southern part of the belt, at a copper district. And Colida, which is not very far away from Santa Helena, has a very marked copper signature. And so, if we find something in Santa Helena, I think we'll give ourselves a lot more value by adding that to that story.
Okay, interesting. Okay. Well, I guess you haven't got much spare cash at the moment. You've got to spend it in the right order. And get the biggest bang for your buck. I can appreciate that. Can you tell us about some of these other team members? I get you've dragged someone out of retirement. Well, he thought he had retired on Santa Helena. But what about the rest of the team? You've got other geos on board as well. You mentioned Quinton, for instance.
Yeah, well, Quinton. A lot of people have said to me, and probably have said to you as well through the tweets that Quinton works for a lot of companies. He does. But Quinton is one of these people who I share major exploration decisions with. So when we finish the geophysics, for example, we will certainly sit down with Quinton and discuss where the drill holes are going to go. We don't do it on a daily basis because, he has a lot of things to do. But he's extremely, extremely bullish about our Apiacas project.
Okay. And anyone else on the team?
And the other geos, well, we brought on a fairly senior geo because, I'm a geologist, but obviously in terms of exactly what I can split myself up and do, I can't be, the VP of exploration and the CEO at the same time. So we brought on a guy who has worked with several major companies who's now in that role. And we've brought on 2 other medium scale, 40-year-old geologists to help us in the push to move these 3 projects along at the same time.
Yeah, and we spoke with Alan Carter recently, and Ian Talbot actually, both who know a little bit about the jurisdiction which you're operating. Not too shabby to have them at the end of a call.
Well, we have a board meeting at the end of next week, and it's always a very interesting board meeting because we've got a lot of technical people in our company. But I think that's the strength of our company. The strength of our company is to find things that maybe other people walked over. If I go back 20, 30 years, and I think I maybe even mentioned this to you in the last interview, a lot of people were skeptical about the Alta Floresta belt. Will there be anything that ever goes into production? Will there be anything which is over 2, 3, 4, 500,000 ounces in size? And obviously there will be, and it'll be much, much bigger. So when, people like to be skeptical, and then afterwards they say, oh, well, I knew it was there. But that's what we're looking for. We're looking for the elephants in the jungle here.
So, Mato Grosso is I think it's well known as a mining jurisdiction. It's a good place to have a mining business. Brazil seems to be getting back on its feet. We've interviewed a number of Brazilian mining companies. Have been problems, have been delays, but you're sensing that there's a desire by state and federal to get back to business.
Yeah, I mean, Brazil's Brazil. You've got to. If you're in South America, you've got to be aware that you have to have the permits. Maybe 30 years ago you didn't need them, but today in a modern world, you need every permit in place. And so sometimes, some things are delayed for reasons that are beyond your control. But so far, as I say, we've got one drill permit now in Mutum on the central part of our Mutum area. And that's where we'll be starting drilling, obviously. And as we gradually work out from that, as we see the results from that first drilling, we will permit other areas to be able to move both east and west from that central area. And the same thing will happen in Cajueiro, and the same thing will happen in Santa Helena.
Do you think, coming back to our earlier question with regards to trying to, break away from the pack, do you think it's possible to raise money for, 700 or 1,000 ton per day plant in the current environment, given your market cap, etc.? Is there enough interest in it?
Oh yeah, it's a different story to where we were last March. Last March we raised money at 6 cents, and in fact, I think when we did the interview, we were maybe even at 5 cents or 4.5 cents. Yeah. So we're in a different situation now. We're about 36. As you pointed out, those warrants, all of those warrants that were exercised, so nearly $2.5 million of warrants exercised, came in of their own volition. We didn't force any of those warrants. And we still got a lot of warrants sitting out there. And as the price, as our exploration goes ahead, and we hopefully show the world that we are advancing in a positive way with Mutum, our stock price will appreciate in the same sense. So, I think it's easy for us to see that. And we don't need to push the production ahead of what we can do. So exploration's coming along. We'll start drilling in July. We'll release those first results probably in September. And, I think that's where we're starting to get the market really interested in where we're going.
Right, I think that's the right thing. So, but at the point where you do need to fund the plant, how much money, what type of money, and what's the cost of that money?
Well, I don't think it'll change too much, Matt, because if this new leach works, what will we do? We'll replace the gravity circuit with tanks, and we'll just do leaching. And so we'll have our crushing circuit, which is already focused in. And so I think the price will be around about $6 million. Now, we might want to put a bit more money into drilling that central area. So let's say we drill another 4,000 or 5,000 meters in there, talking about perhaps another $500,000, $600,000 in there. And that's what the mining side of Cajueiro will look like. So, if we raise 7.5, that would be more than sufficient for us to put the Cajueiro into production. And I know a lot of people want to see Cajueiro in production, so do I, because I don't want to see it in production just because of the money. I'm not one of these guys who, I'm not really a money guy, I'm an adrenaline guy. I like to see things built up. And so what I really want to see the production for in Cajueiro is to be able to strip the surface and to be able to show people in other mining companies, look guys, these are the structural directions which are controlling the mineralization. You can see it here. You can see it in Maria Bonita. You can see it in Novo Sonhos. You can see it in Sossego. So that's why you should be paying attention to this Cajueiro project.